There are so many mysteries that I once dismissed as mere stories, but the line between our myths and truth is fragile and blurry. I need to find answers. I must understand.
Welcome to my podcast. So it's been a while, as it usually is at the end of a given year. I don't usually end so early, though. I think my last episode was in September. I usually have like a last episode in like early November and then do my final episode on the last day of the year. And it didn't happen here. And the reason why is that I had some things going on, but also the world is all jacked up and it was heavy. And so all these things that are not really important in the big picture, I didn't feel like releasing episodes on them. Like, I put outlines together a few times and just nothing inspired me enough to put on microphone. And I didn't want to do another political episode because what's the point of that as well? Is how I feel about it right now. That may change, but right now that's how I feel about that. So it's 2026, and at the beginning of the year I did find something. I guess this is not the beginning anymore, this is February, but I did find something that inspired me enough to put voice to microphone, which is, I guess I should set the stage here. I listen to a lot of podcasts every week, and I was listening to semi-weekly listens, which is Juan Carlos Bagnell's Some Gadget Guy Weekly, the Some Gadget Guy Q&A, and he likes to talk about mobile gaming among other things, and casually he dropped, and I hadn't heard anything about this before, that the studio that did Red Dead Redemption and Alien Isolation, AAA games from the 7th generation, both now released for Android and iOS from Feral Interactive, were working on a release of the most AAA of those games, to me, Tomb Raider 2013. What he didn't give me was a time frame, so when I went to look it up, it said, hey, releasing soon, you can pre-order this now. And I selected it, and then like 2 days later, boom, Tomb Raider 2013, $20, no problem. I downloaded it and played it, and I'm not finished, but this is something that I will actually play all the way through, because this is one of my favorite games from that generation. 2013 was a great year for games in the PS3/Xbox 360 generation, and games like, for third-party games like Tomb Raider 2013 and BioShock Infinite were some of the greatest games ever made for the generation. So yeah, I love that game. I love that style of game, but I love AAA gaming in general. So the style of game is 3D Metroidvania, kind of semi-open world, and it's what dominates the third-person action campaign in the modern time. It follows a dedicated story and presents you with kind of like a branching world that you can move through, but mostly you're following the story. So you can move throughout this branching world as it opens over the course of time at will. But to follow the story, there's a path there, which is something that I enjoy. I enjoy following that narrative, but also it has things like skill trees for the player and escalation evolution trees for the equipment. And this has been the preeminent style of third-person campaign gaming since probably Arkham Asylum. It may even precede that, but that's the one that sticks most strongly as the first big game to set that style of gaming in stone. Before that, it was level. So yeah, this was developed and released for mobile, which is a huge thing to me because campaigns are the kinds of games I enjoy. I like to play through a campaign, and AAA gaming where things are lush and beautiful and the effort can be felt through every aspect of the game, through the gameplay and the art direction and the voice acting. That's the experience I like. It's like going to a movie to see a blockbuster. Like, I love movies, and I like watching movies at home, but the movies that I like to watch in the theater are big movies. It doesn't have to be a traditional blockbuster, but it has to be beautiful and lush in some way that would justify me spending the money to see it on the big screen. Tomb Raider 2013 is big screen gaming. So this experience, now that I've had it, is big screen gaming on mobile. It's damn near perfect. And the thing is that I was talking to a buddy about mobile gaming last year, about emulation, because in the last few years, PC emulation on mobile has been a thing, and he was talking about how some of the games didn't run very well, and he's like, well, that's to be expected, because these platforms can't possibly support this kind of gaming. And I was like, well, your game's not running well. This Steam game that you have installed on your phone is not running well because there's several layers of emulation that make it possible to play this. So there's so many layers of abstraction that take processing power. The game wasn't coded for your device, so it may or may not run well, but there's a lot between you and that game. As far as power, though, it is not at all true that a 7th gen game can't run on a phone. Going back for years, I've been saying that. And we use the Nintendo Switch as an example. And he's like, well, it's not even as powerful as the Switch. And he's got the highest of high-end phones from last year. And so I had to share with him that that is not the case. And this guy is savvy. He's an IT technician like myself, so he knows about computers. He actually is a gaming guy on a professional level. He does game music and goes to gaming conventions. But he did not understand that the Nintendo Switch is not at all the same as a modern smartphone, like orders of magnitude power difference. So the original Nintendo Switch, which is hardware-wise a 7th gen gaming console, it was made to have like a power level of the actual desktop console it was replacing with Wii U. So in portable mode, as a Switch that you're carrying around, it can process 200 billion operations per second. And then if you put it in the dock, which has an active fan, and so can cool it more efficiently, it can do up to 400 billion operations per second. That would be impressive for that generation for a mobile device. When you consider that something like the PS4, which is not a mobile device, can do 1.8 trillion operations per second. More powerful, but not orders of magnitude more powerful than the old Nintendo Switch. Now, the modern smartphone, and so we're thinking of something from maybe last year, so a Galaxy S25 that's running a Snapdragon Elite System on a Chip, SoC, which was last year's highest high-end SoC, can do 40 to 50 trillion operations per second. Orders of magnitude more powerful than the original Switch, but also the PS4, and orders of magnitude more powerful than even the Switch 2 that just came out. It can do this kind of gaming, this 7th gen gaming. Now, the thermal envelope on something like a smartphone is not anywhere near the same as something that's larger or has a bigger open cavity in it, something like a Switch, or active cooling. So even if that phone has a really complex passive heatsink, it's still a passive heatsink, and the surface area that it can cool from is only the body of the phone. So it can only push away so much heat. So if you're driving it, like playing a involved game with lots of per pixel shading and a billion light sources, pushing through complex textures, using all the RAM and the CPU and the GPU, then the phone's going to get hot, and it won't run something like, I don't know, Cyberpunk 2077 for any extended period of time. But that's not what it's running. What it's running is a game that is 13 years old that still looks better than anything that has been created for mobile in recent times. And so many times before, they've tried to create console games for mobile, and the effect has been that people haven't received them well. They're usually not, in the past, they weren't as good, and the power differential between old SoCs from 10 or 15 years ago and now is tremendous, so they can do them now. Like when BioShock came out for iOS in 2012 or 2013, whenever it was, might have been even like 2009, they had to downgrade that game tremendously to make it run on an iOS device, and it just wasn't as fun an experience. But in the modern time, you can connect all kinds of controllers, both physical and Bluetooth, to play the game that was meant to be played. You can basically turn your phone into a Steam Deck, so it should be able to play these things. So Tomb Raider 2013 with a Bluetooth controller is basically playing your game on a Switch or a Steam Deck, and it is fantastic. Feral Interactive did a tremendous job. Stable all the way through, but not only stable on my Pixel 10, which is a phone from last year, also stable on my Pixel 6a from 2022. The Pixel 6a's processor, SoC, System on a Chip, does like 27 trillion operations per second. So still way beyond anything that something like the Switch did. And once again, its thermal envelope is comparatively paltry, so it can't maintain the highest of operations for a long time, but it can maintain high enough operation to run something like a game, even a AAA game, from 13 years ago. Now, there's a reason that AAA gaming is not developed for mobile, because the investment, the gamble of the investment is different. So a AAA game from 13 years ago took years to develop. I think they worked on Tomb Raider 2013 from 2010 to 2013. It was a $100 million game, so it was like making a movie. That was the era where they were like, man, we can spend as much money on these games as we can spend on movies. They did that with, I think, Call of Duty was probably one of the first big ones to do that. Spend $100 million or $300 million to produce a game. Now, in the modern time, you do get some mobile properties that will spend that much. I think Genshin Impact is the biggest game in the world, and that is considered AAA mobile gaming. But the investment's different. The assets shown on screen, the level of gameplay, the complexity of all of the assets that go into that, the voice acting, the art, it's not the same. It's not the same, and they're developing that game to rope you into gacha mechanics, so they're not trying to tell as compelling a story in the cinematic style as something like Tomb Raider 2013, also because Tomb Raider 2013 is a Western-style game. So it's not the same. Now, you can't get somebody for campaign-style gaming especially, because you're just playing through that campaign and then you're done, to pay $60 for a AAA game on mobile. You just can't do it. The investment, the risk-reward isn't there. It's not how people play games on mobile now, but they could, and you don't have to pay that much because those assets exist in the form of a billion older games that were AAA in their time that all look and play better than anything that comes out on mobile now. And because your phone can do so much in the modern time, it is more powerful than many computers, and it's in your pocket. You can use it as a computer. Some of my sessions with Tomb Raider 2013 have been played with my phone connected to HDMI in desktop mode, where it generates a desktop-style interface, and you can play the game full screen on. And my monitor in this case is a 32-inch monitor on a 32-inch screen. You can take your device and hook it up to an external display through HDMI and generate a desktop-style interface. My Pixel 10 offers a desktop-style interface, and I can use that to play the game in full screen on an external monitor. I have a 32-inch monitor at my desk, and I'm getting a gaming experience that's comparable to something like a PS4. I'm playing a PS4 level of output for Tomb Raider, and they're not using the 8th gen assets for this game. Feral Interactive is using the 7th gen assets, but at the PC level, so it's outputting at full HD, 1080p, natively, and you can play it at 30 or 60 given the device. My device supports 60, but it doesn't, that 60 frames per second doesn't maintain a 60 frames per second. I play it in graphics mode on 30 because I enjoy the better image and the stable 30 rather than a 60 that's not a stable 60. The Pixel 6a that I played on supports 30 but does not have a performance mode, is what the high frame rate mode is called. Doesn't support that, but it maintains a stable 30 frames per second. And yeah, a wonderful experience that can be had on this device that can do spreadsheets and process documents, edit photos and edit video. All of these things can be done from mobile now, and gaming, true gaming, is kind of the last thing. So the fact that we can run PC gaming emulation on our phones is proof of concept. The next thing would be to have Steam available from your phone. Actually, Valve, who owns Steam, is releasing some consoles this year that run Steam on Android. So hopefully Android can get some, or Google can get some licensing deals done to make that work on actual Android and be installed from the Play Store. If we could install Steam from the Play Store and play our Steam libraries natively, as opposed to playing it through something like GameSir's Game Hub, which I have done on my Pixel 10, which does not actually support GameSir's Game Hub. I've done it anyway. Then that would be tremendous. The GameSir Game Hub experience is something that is pretty special too, as long as we're talking about full mobile gaming. GameSir's Game Hub works on specific supported devices. They're like, we support the Snapdragon GPU and we support the MediaTek GPU. We do not explicitly support the GPU on Pixel devices, which is Google's fault because they went with a non-standard GPU. And so the first time I tried to install and play PC games on my Pixel through GameSir, it didn't, or Game Hub, it didn't work. But after a couple updates, boom, I found a set of games that worked. And I was happy. I had like 7 games that I would play, PC games that I would play on my Pixel 10. It doesn't work anymore. Made me sad, but now I have Tomb Raider 2013 as a proof of concept, so I'm kind of consolation for that, so I'm happy. And I'm happy in getting a way that I wanted to talk about it, and I have. And I think that'll do it for now. So, if you have had a good time listening to me be giddy about nerdy things, then you can catch me on Threads or Blue Sky to talk about those nerdy things. You can find me at Johnathanblade on both those platforms. That's John. You can also catch me on all the podcatchers at The Elder Blerd, and you can catch me on YouTube at Johnathanblade1, John. The podcast is on the Johnathanblade1 channel under The Elder Blerd and under my handle is Johnathanblade, which was the former name of the podcast. But yeah, hit me up and we'll talk about nerdy stuff. We'll talk about movies or comic books or gaming or maybe politics if I'm feeling frosty. Alright, I've enjoyed being back on mic, and hopefully you'll hear me again soon. As always, thanks for listening.